Good afternoon, Karen.
Hi, David. How are you doing today?
I had a really nice day so far. I had lunch with my son. We had a nice walk in the park, and we enjoy doing that from time to time. By the way, I have four children, and live in Denver, and one lives in Salt Lake City, and one lives in Portland, Oregon. I have two boys and two girls, and they're all in their 30s now. So
Wow.
every once in a while, I go to lunch with my son or go to a movie with my daughter Amanda. That's what we like to do. So, anyways, my name is David Cope, and I'm the founder with Peggy Litt of a New Life Center. And I got involved in relationships and the importance of having a relationship after I got divorced and realized I didn't want to live the rest of my life without having a loving and intimate relationship. So at a New Life Center, I've been doing research and study over the last 12 years on how we create our relationships with ourselves and how often we disconnect with ourselves. And what I found out in having an intimate and loving relationship with another person, that I had to start with myself and learn what it means to be connected to myself and have a relationship with myself. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today is what does building a relationship with yourself actually mean? So, Karen, can you introduce yourself and talk about the principles of what our Facebook group is about?
I can. So, I'm Karen Seitz, and I'm the lead teacher for the relationship program that we offer at a New Life Center. And I've been training in this work, living this work, doing this work in my marriage and in every aspect of my life for about 4 years now. And it's completely transformed my relationship with myself, how I see myself, how I interact in my relationships. It's been completely life-changing, and I'm very passionate about it and so excited to be teaching it and sharing it with all of you in our Facebook group. And our three principles for our Facebook group in order to change yourself and have that relationship with yourself is that you are 100% responsible for your happiness. That as David's been saying lately, happiness is an inside job, that's our job to do for ourselves. And that I'm the only person that I can change. In a relationship and marriage, we get so hung up on trying to change our spouse or to try to change our partner that we lose sight of that very fundamental knowledge that we all have, which is we're the only person we can really change. And we get really stuck trying to change somebody else, thinking that'll make us feel better when it's impossible. And our third principle is that authentic intimacy actually starts with having a relationship with yourself. And that means I've got to be willing to look at myself and see how I'm disconnected from who I am and how I feel bad about myself so that I can begin to build that. And when I have that relationship with myself, then I can bring that into my marriage and into all my other relationships in my life and have that intimate connection that I've been wanting. And those are the three principles that we follow in this group.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
So I think a good place to start is to realize that if you do not have a relationship with yourself or feel disconnected from yourself, it's a normal experience that as a human, that's what we naturally experience ourselves as. And as we discuss this today, it's not to make you feel bad or there's something wrong. It's just we don't build a relationship with ourselves until we realize we don't have a relationship with ourselves. And then it gives us the opportunity to understand what that does, what to do and how to do it. And part of our A New Life Center relationship course is to teach you how to connect to yourself maybe for the first time and build a relationship with yourself. So then you can go into your marriage or relationship from a healthy perspective of being self-aware of your own experience and how you relate to your partner. And I think that's the fundamental problem of not having a relationship with yourself is that for a woman, you think your husband is the problem. And the reason why that happens is we've talked about, being a victim and how being a victim causes us to look outside of ourselves for, for the external world to be the source of why we're feeling the way we do about ourselves. That act of thinking or believing that our source of how we feel about ourselves is outside of ourselves is the experience of being disconnected from yourself. When you build a relationship with yourself, you have self-awareness to discern whether the experience you're having is an internal experience of yourself, or you can separate the experience and understand, no, this is not what's going on with me, it's actually my partner. But until you have that discerning factor, whether you can decipher between your own personal experience and that which is happening externally, you have no self-awareness, or you don't have a relationship with yourself. So, Karen, can you share a little bit about how you originally came in and before you started this work, not having a relationship with yourself, and talk a little bit about self-awareness and your experience?
I can. I'm smiling because and kind of laughing to myself because when I came into this work, I was 100% certain that I had a wonderful relationship with myself and that I was very self-aware and very spiritually evolved. And that was my story to cover up the fact that I was actually really disconnected from who I was and I had no idea who I was. So before I came into this work, I was frantically searching for something in my life to help me solve the problems that I had, and again, to know who I am. And I tried everything. I did lots of talk therapy. I did EMDR. I did Reiki and energy work and just about any healing modality you can think of. I tried it, and I read tons of books, and all of these things took me further and further away from myself because I wasn't able to really acknowledge, because of how the mind works and how I had completely externalized the experience of myself, meaning all the people in my life, all of the different roles that I played, my spiritual path, all my self-help endeavors. I used those things to define who I was, which didn't allow me to see the real problem, which was that I wasn't connected to who I am and I didn't know who I was. And that's where I came into this work. And I didn't have any self-awareness because I was so focused on who I was out here instead of being able to know who I am on the inside, which what this work taught me, I had to dig in to all those ways that I felt bad about myself, which was the reason why I didn't have a connection or a relationship with myself, because at a fundamental level, we all feel bad about who we are. And I felt really bad about who I was. But because of my happy pill and the persona that I put out here, I didn't want to risk that.
Sure.
So I didn't want to dig into those ways I felt bad about myself. It felt too scary. And I completely covered up that I even felt those things because they were so scary to me.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the mind is very tricky because it helps prevent us from looking deep within ourselves because we don't like to know and be vulnerable about the things, how we deeply feel about ourselves, so we suppress it. It's often difficult to get to that. The work that we do at a new life center actually allows us to go deep enough to transform those parts of us, so we actually can, as Peggy said the other day, we actually can transform ourselves internally to have an experiential awareness that we are happy within ourselves internally, not from just a happy pill or pretending or believing that we are. So I thought I'd take a little bit to explain why it is that we are unable to build a true relationship with ourselves and why that happens. And the way the mind works is that it seeks meaning and purpose externally outside of ourselves. And we begin to define ourselves as who we are by the external things in our life. So, for example, a good way to understand how it's difficult and almost impossible to know ourselves is because imagine being a mother. You show up as who you are or what you need to be as a mother, and then maybe you get up in the morning and you go to work and you show up as who you need to be and how you show up at work, and then maybe when you come home you greet your husband and now you're a wife and you behave and act as a wife you believe a wife should be, and we begin to build these personas and self identities that are uniquely um, evolved for each of those labels. So imagine you might be for women a wife, uh, you can be a daughter. So imagine your relationship with your mother, and how you show up in your relationship with your mother is totally different than how you might show up with your girlfriend or maybe your mother-in-law, how you show up with your mother-in-law. And man, see, in each one of these relationships, we show up differently, and it's because the way the mind works is to seek meaning and purpose and define us externally because we never were taught how to define ourselves internally and to know who we are because the mind is so tricky. And that's one of the things we've been studying over the last 10 or 12 years at a new life center is the mechanics of the mind and why we create these behavioral patterns that we seem to have go on year after year, never can break it down. And what's the foundation that creates that? So at a new life center, our relationship class is based upon a deep understanding of the way the mind works. And because we understand the way the mind works, we can transcend or bypass the mind and get to the root issues of our problems. And the relationship class was based upon that concept, knowing that women struggle with intimacy in their marriage. The foundational principle is what we're talking about is that in order to have intimacy in your marriage, you first must build a relationship with yourself. And it's often, well, what does that really mean? And what that means is that you begin to know who you are. You begin to believe in yourself and trust yourself, that you put yourself into situations where you can grow and learn and know who you are. What happens is in life, we kind of get stuck in these little comfort zones, and as victims what we do is we create these concurrent comfort zones that we go from one comfort zone to another thinking that maybe we're changing, but all we're doing is recreating these comfort zones that make us feel safe and comfortable because we're scared to be out of control, and the comfort zones keep us in control. But when we're in this comfort zone and we live in them consistently year after year, we don't learn who we are, and we become kind of bored and stale, and we see life as happening to us, and it causes us to keep in these repeating patterns. So what we help people do in the New Life Center is learn how to step out of your comfort zone, how to create a relationship with yourself, and be able to define who you are and believe in yourself, which is really fundamental to having a healthy relationship with yourself and anybody else. Am I talking too much yet?
You're doing great. I'm like, yeah, what David's saying. It works.
Yeah, it works.
It works.
Yeah. Before I got into this, my story is when I got divorced, I couldn't get up with my kids anymore. My kids were my whole life, and I had to find a way in my life, and I lost my money, and I just lost the sense of who I was, and I had to try to rebuild myself. And at that time, I thought I was very spiritual and connected to my relationship with God and the universe, but I lost myself. So I realized, well, how connected could I be if I don't know who I am? And I was depressed and discouraged, and my life felt like it had no meaning. So for some reason, I was able to look inside myself and begin to develop an understanding of how to find meaning and purpose within myself. And that's kind of been the foundation of a new life center, which has allowed me to develop an intimate relationship with myself and then create processes and and programs that allow people to reconnect with themselves in a very deep way that's not fleeting and temporary. I know sometimes I worked with women over the years and they say, well, I don't want to be happy because it's so fleeting. And
Mhm.
I don't want to work hard to be happy because I can't hold on to it. But I sure can hold on to this unhappiness that I have within my comfort zone because I know I can control it and I can control whether I'm unhappy at any time, but I'm so afraid to be happy because it's something so fleeting and every time I get become happy, I lose it. So what we do in a new life center in our program, we actually teach people how to have it internally as a permanent experience of themselves so it never goes away. Or if you do something that causes you to disconnect, you can experience it and then reconnect with yourself because you know the mechanics of how that works. So you're constantly in tune with yourself and have self-awareness of how you're responding and reacting to life, to work, to your husband, and then you no longer are a victim and you can actually make changes because this awareness of in a relationship with yourself gives you choices. So what happens, when boy, I'm really talking a lot today. What
It's very
happens
unlike you.
when you're married? What happens? You get upset. Something's happened. All of a sudden, you're so caught up in the emotional turmoil or the hurt or the pain. You lose your sense of self awareness, and you don't know whether it's coming from you or them, or and all of a sudden, as Peggy says, you get sped up, and you have no awareness of where the source is actually coming from. So the way the mind always works is it projects onto the other person as the source. So when you build a relationship with yourself, you slow down enough and so you can choose to see, okay, as I would say, okay, David, okay, how do you need to respond in this and what's the healthy way to respond? When you don't have a relationship with yourself and have no self-awareness, you can't make that critical choice of what is a healthy response and behavior and what's an unhealthy response. And you just get caught in this trap of repeating patterns of unhealthy, repetitive, responsive behavior that has no self-awareness.
That's about how it works.
Well, that was helpful. So let me talk about, we talked a little bit how do you create a relationship with yourself, but just to remind you, Peggy talked about it in the call yesterday, is that you have to begin to find your likes and dislikes. What happens when we get married is we get intertwined. We think we're supposed to be a partnership where we in a sense we live as one, but the problem when that happens is we become intertwined with each other. And one of the things that I hear most often that women complain about in their relationships is I'm lost and I don't know who I am. And that's because we get so intertwined with our partners that we lose our sense of self. Often women, before they get married, they're very independent and self-sufficient, and then they get married, and all of a sudden they become entwined with their partner and lose their sense of self, and they get lost and feel like they don't know who they are, and they're trapped in a marriage and a relationship that they have no way out.
And what
So
happens, or I was going to say what happens because we feel lost and don't know who we are. And the way the mind works is we become victims to that and we blame our husbands for it.
yeah,
And then it doesn't allow us to reconnect and find who we are again. So we, like David's talking about, we just go in those circles and stay in those patterns and get really lost and really frustrated and trapped and unhappy.
yeah. So one of the first places to start, which is often hard for people, is to build a relationship with yourself is to realize you don't have a relationship with yourself. And that's one of the things we do work with here at a New Life Center. And some people, it's too overwhelming for them to realize that they have been disconnected and they don't know who they are. But that's a very common and normal thing for people to do. And then so what happens is when you start building a relationship with yourself, you start giving yourself self-awareness and choices which empower you to no longer be a victim and make discerning choices and work your way out of repetitive behavioral patterns in your marriage. And that's why we say in, in this program is you can only change yourself. And the reason when you build a relationship with yourself, you empower yourself to make the choices, to see the dynamics in your relationship, and make different choices in response. Because when we caught trapped in the mind, we have no awareness of what's happening, and again we naturally project onto our partner because deep within ourselves we feel unhappy and miserable, and we project that our partner is the source. But when you build a relationship with yourself, you begin to be able to discern and tease apart these experiences so you can make different types of choices.
And you begin to normalize it too. I know that it's challenging and difficult to see yourself in these things because it's no fun, because I have to see those ways in which I feel bad about myself. But once I get the practice,
Mm-hmm.
and I know how to do that, and I have the guidance that I need to do that, it doesn't, it no longer becomes this way to beat myself up or feel bad about myself of, oh my gosh, I don't have a relationship with myself, or I'm disconnected. It just becomes normalized. And then once I do that, I can actually begin to work on it. Because if I think it's this big, bad, scary monster and, oh, I'm a horrible person, if that's the case for me, that's just another trick we're playing on ourselves, to not do the work to have that relationship and build it with myself.
Thank you. So for the listeners, a good way to check in to see whether you have a relationship with yourself and have self-awareness is watching the videos, especially with Karen and Peggy, or with Karen and I. If you can't see yourself in the videos as being described, for example, if you can't see yourself as a victim, or you can't see yourself as the ice queen, or you can't see yourself as somebody who's stubborn, or you can't see yourself as somebody that has walls up that wants to push people away or don't let people in. That's a really good benchmark to realize that you have no self-awareness, because the program that we've developed has been developed over 10 to 12 years, and everything we're sharing with you, we've found consistently, and this course is for women, that all the women we've worked with have these common experiences about themselves. So when we don't want to see ourselves with that, it is a really good way for you to know, I don't have any self-awareness of what I'm really doing and who I am, which tells you don't have a relationship with yourself. So these, a good one is the Ice Queen. And if you watch that, if you can't see yourself as an Ice Queen, somebody who has closed their heart off and built a wall around their heart, and as some women say, I not only have a wall, but I have barbed wires around my wall to make sure nobody ever gets in. And this is consistent what we found with women consistently over and over again. It isn't just a random thing. It's we have yet to find a woman who's honest and that doesn't know herself as at some level as an ice queen. And this is not good or bad. It's not trying to make women wrong, men right. It's just in order for women to begin to have an intimate relationship and a connection with their partner and with themselves, they, as Peggy said, you got to drop your walls. But first, you have to know that they're up, and that you're a normal woman who's trying to protect her heart because you've been hurt so many times in your life, and every time you're hurt, you add another brick and another layer. And it's not because there's anything wrong with you. It's just the way we work as humans to protect ourselves, because what we do not want to do is to feel the pain of being hurt again. So what we do is we build up these walls around us, and we begin to keep everybody at a distance, afraid to let them in. And the person that we love the most, which is for women in marriages, hopefully is your husband. That's why we can treat our husbands so mean and poorly, is because we are so afraid to let them in. And with these walls around your heart to protect yourself, you project onto your husband that he's the source of why you feel so empty inside, and so disconnected with yourself, and feel like there's no intimacy. Or And what we're trying to do is help you see yourself in these behavioral patterns, so that you can work and understand how to get out of them, so you can begin to transform your life in your relationships with your husband, and with your children, or with your mother, or your family members. Because as you change and drop your walls and open your heart, and to know that being hurt and the pain of life is normal, which is what we teach, you go into life being vulnerable and open to experience relationships in a true way, which allows you to show up with yourself. Of course, your mind's saying, "Why would I want to do that?" And I'll
Yeah.
just get hurt, and people will take advantage of me, and I'll be exposed, and people will just take advantage of me because I'll be soft. But it actually works the other way around. When you have your inner strength and know who you are, people don't take advantage of you. They can't hurt you, and you have the strength to feel confident within yourself and who you are. And it's just a total different experience in every relationship that you have. So we're really hopeful that you can begin to understand and look at these videos as a way to determine how self-aware you are, and what type of relationship you actually have with yourself, so that you can know that in order to have a relationship with your husband that has any foundation of being healthy, is you have to have a relationship with yourself. You have to know who you are, and begin to lift the walls up, so you can let people into your heart, which is the foundation of intimacy.
Yeah. And I can't move forward until I know where I'm at. So it's a healthy thing. It's a good thing if you're able to see yourself in these videos and realize that you're lacking a relationship with yourself. That's a good thing, because from
Mm-hmm.
that place you can put a foot forward. You have a place to begin. And there have been many of these things that we're teaching about in these videos and sharing with you that I was stubborn about, bro. I was very stubborn about knowing myself as stubborn.
Yeah,
And I've had to learn that,
yeah,
as humbling as it is, it's very unlikely that I am ever the exception.
yeah,
So it's a good bet to know that you're experiencing yourself in the ways that we're teaching and talking about, and that's a good thing, even if
yeah,
it's uncomfortable or it's
yeah,
hard to see,
yeah,
because that's where you can truly change and have an amazing life that you didn't even realize was possible for you.
yeah.
It's amazing.
Thank you, Ken. It is remarkable and almost like magic. The
Yeah.
moment you start building a relationship with yourself and beginning to make healthy choices in how you react and respond. And the reason why we say you only can change yourself at a fundamental level is also because the magic that happens in your marriage when you shift and have a relationship with yourself, it's almost magical how your husband responds in a totally different way. And of course, the assumption in this program is that for you women, that you're married to a good man, and a good man will respond immediately to the changes in how you respond and react to him. And it really is a very empowering thing, especially for women, to know that you really are in control of your own destiny in your marriage. And though you the men have all the issues and things to work on too, but because the nature of how men and women are different, and if you're with a good man, when you change yourself, how your husband reacts to you will change in relationship to how you're feeling about yourself.
And
Any,
It really does work that way. I mean, when I began working on myself in my marriage, my husband and I barely talked. We were very much just like roommates, and we had only been married for like 6 or 8 months. And that's how quickly my walls went up, because once I got married, I got the thing that I wanted, and whew, the walls were up and he wasn't getting in. And I made sure that he knew that I thought that he was the one making me unhappy. And we were never big arguers. We would just be in silence, both of us home, and both of us silent. And I was always holding myself so tightly, being really afraid of intimacy and letting him anywhere near me. And it was when I started to see how many walls I had, and that I was just protecting myself from getting hurt, and began to work on those things. What I learned is that taking my walls down is not painful, and it does not hurt, and it does not destroy me. It actually allows me to be myself with my husband, with other people in my life, and it allows me to experience myself and my heart that I was never able to do before. And it's a whole new world inside of me, and because of that, it's a whole new world out here in my external life too. And it just works. It just works.
Thank you, Karen. That's what Peggy calls the softness, is when, as women, you drop your walls and allow yourself to be vulnerable. And that's your true strength as women. I know the mind wants to say, "Oh, I can't do that because people take advantage of me and walk all over me, and my strength comes from my walls." But it's a false strength, and it comes from being scared and afraid. But when you drop your walls and be comfortable with being who you are, it's really strength and empowerment, which is really exciting and vibrant to experience and be with.
Yeah. And then my husband responds. I think my husband got so, because of the walls that I had up, and how distant I was, and how quick I was to tell him he was wrong, and point out all the things I wanted him to change, and constantly focused on him. He shut down, because he was like, well, I just won't say anything, because everything was a trap.
That's
to
right.
Point out his flaws and how he was wrong. So when I began to find that softness in myself and take my walls down, he could feel that, and began to respond to me differently. But it was me that had to take that first step. I had to be kind first. I had to take those walls down. And then that opened up a whole new connection between us that just continues to grow and thrive in our marriage.
Thank you, Karen. So can you do a little wrap up for today? Why is it important for intimacy in a marriage to have a relationship with yourself? Why is that critical?
Well, if that last principle in our group is authentic intimacy, is really about knowing who I am and having a relationship with myself, and then I can bring me into my marriage in a whole new way. Without that, there can't be any intimacy. And what we're talking about today is that you have to be willing to see your lack of self-awareness and your lack of relationship with yourself, not to beat yourself up, not because it's wrong or bad, because this is normal human behavior. Because of how the mind works, we create the experience of who we are externally through our attachments to the people in our life, to our jobs, to the different roles we have. And when we do that, we're connected to all these people and all these things outside of us. There can be no connection to me internally when I'm connected to all these things outside of myself. So when things start going wrong in my marriage or in my other relationships, I'm going to project out onto that, because that's threatening my sense of self. So when I can see that and be honest with myself about that, and see how I don't have any self-awareness because of that experience I've created, then I can start to do the work to find out who I am, to look at the ways I feel bad about myself, not to wallow in them and sit in them, to actually let them go. And then when I do that, I begin to know who I am. I feel solid in myself. I believe in myself. I learn to take care of myself and put myself in situations in life that are scary or uncomfortable to get to know who I am. And once I do that, I build this lovely foundation of myself, which then I can share with my husband and I can share in my different relationships and experiences in life. And in order to do that, I have to be willing to see where I'm at. And I think that's really the bottom line of what this video is about, is to be able to see that maybe you don't have a relationship with yourself so that you can maybe take that next step in order to do the work to build that relationship and watch your marriage just change right
Yeah.
before your eyes.
It really is kind of magical, almost
Yeah.
unbelievable that it can
Yeah.
happen
Yeah.
so quickly and easily.
Yeah. I had
Thank
a
you so
client.
much.
Oh,
Oh,
sure.
yeah,
I was just
yeah,
going to share one other
yeah,
thing. I had a
sure.
client yesterday who this client was working on letting go of a past hurt in a relationship and was feeling really stuck with where she was at. And it was like, I don't see how at the end of this 8 weeks that I'm going to be on the other side of it. And she said that 2 weeks ago. And yesterday she was just amazed because she's like, oh my gosh, it's gone. It's gone. I didn't believe that this could happen. And that's how quickly, when we're willing just to look at ourselves and just work on ourselves, that's how quickly we transform and make the changes that we want to in life. And it's amazing to
It
watch.
is. It is.
Yeah.
We're very blessed here at a New Life Center. We're all true teachers, meaning we're all learning and working on ourselves continuously. And we feel very blessed that we have the tools to look inside to make the deep transformational changes, and that we have the able to build programs that can teach others to do the same thing. And I know I feel blessed. And thank you, Karen, for being a true teacher who lives the what she teaches and is capable of doing that in your life, because that's very important to us at New Life Center, that we're true teachers, not just teaching something that we're trying to learn or that we can't do ourselves. We're actually all doing it and learning and growing continuously.
Yeah,
So thank you, Karen.
of course. If anyone, just I guess in wrapping up,
Mm.
if you're realizing through this video, oh my gosh, I'm that person that they're talking about. I don't have a relationship with myself. And you're ready to dive into that and get the help that you need to see the ways you've been tricking yourself or hiding from yourself. Our program can help you do that really quickly, and it works, and it's
Mm.
long lasting, and it's permanent. It's not a band-aid approach. So if you're ready to learn more about that, or even just to get clarity on your issues and challenges, please private message me. We'll get a call set up and just have a conversation. I would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Karen. And thank you all for listening. We certainly appreciate you being part of our Facebook group and listening to the videos. And we love sharing this information and hoping you're getting a lot. So have a nice day. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.